The literature of Luxembourg is little known beyond the country's borders, partly because Luxembourg authors write in one or more of the three official languages, partly because many works are specifically directed to a local readership. Furthermore, it was not until the 19th century that the literature of Luxembourg began to develop in parallel with growing awareness of the country's national identity following the Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of London. Yolande of Viardon. There is one historic work which has recently gained a place in Luxembourg literature, the Codex Marian d'Alenersys, a manuscript from the beginning of the 14th century, tells the story of Yolande of Viardon. Discovered in Luxembourg in November 1999, it is believed to be the work of Brother Hermann von Veldenz, who wrote the story of Yolande's life after her death in 1283. It consists of 5,963 lines of rhyming couplets in the distinctive Moselle-Franconian German dialect, which bears close similarities to today's Luxembourgish. The poem tells how Princess Yolande gave up the comforts of her home in Viardon Castle to join the convent of Marienthal, where she later became the prioress. 19th century. Despite the use of French and German for administrative purposes, it was Luxembourger Deutsch, now known as Luxembourgish, which was behind the development of Luxembourg's literature in the 19th century, contributing much to the consolidation of the national identity. In 1829, Antoine May published the very first book in Luxembourgish, a collection of poems titled Die Schreckop de Luxembourger Parnassus. The book contains 6 poems: her love poem, Und Christine, a meditation on the romantic subject of night, Den Wecht, a real-life depiction, Een Ablekening Wirtshaus zu Luxembourg, and 3 fables, Die Porcelains and Die Erdäsche, Die Spengel and Die Noel and Die Fluende Peertskreker. It is interesting to note that while Aesop and La Fontaine built the fables around animals, May often personified inanimate objects. For example, in Die Spengel and Die Noel, the welted Miss Needle tries but fails to override the pin, reflecting the failure of the French aristocracy to prevent the French Revolution. May was to write several more books of Luxembourgish poetry while teaching mathematics at the University of Liège. The next generation brought 3 poets who are now considered to be Luxembourg's classical authors. Edmond de La Fontaine, better known by his pen name Dix, is remembered above all for his contributions to the theatre. His comedy La Skullchain, the first play to be performed in Luxembourgish, was followed by Die Mumsais, the operetta Die Kermsgacht and De Remplacing. He also wrote several poems and a number of prose works about Luxembourg and its people. His contemporary, Michel Lenz, another poet, is best known for having written on HECUT, Luxembourg's national anthem, which contributed much to promoting the Luxembourgish language among its inhabitants. However, it was Michel Rodin who wrote Luxembourg's national epic, Renat Odder Furasum Frackenemansgrey is to simply Reiner the Fox, published in 1872. The satirical work is an adaptation of the traditional Low German fox epic to a setting in Luxembourg with pertinent insights into the characteristics of the local people. While little of note was written in German during this period, Félix Thys read the first Luxembourg novel in French, Marc Bruno, Profil d'Artiste, which was published shortly after his early death in 1855. Early 20th century, Batty Weber worked both as a journalist and as an author of short stories, novels, plays and poems, contributing much to the development of Luxembourg culture. One of his most important contributions to Luxembourg's identity was his Abreis Kalender off calendar, a daily column he contributed from 1913 to 1940 to the Luxembourgische Zeitung, commenting on items of local cultural interest. An important literary figure in the early 20th century was Nikolaus Welter, who addressed Luxembourg issues in his German-language plays including Die Söhne des Oslings and as a poet in Hochofen. Welter is also regarded as Luxembourg's first literary historian. Novels in Luxembourgish. Luxembourgish literature was long confined to poetry and the theatre, but in the 1980s, as a result of the movement to make Luxembourgish an official language, Guy Reewinnig and Roger Manderscheid both wrote novels in Luxembourgish. Reewinig's Hannah Dem Atlantic broke new ground as the first novel written in the local language, ostensibly the story of Jem Meetinger, a street sweeper. It is in fact a critical account of the problems of family life and the authoritarian structures of politics and society, adapting the stream of consciousness technique to experiments with the Luxembourgish lexicon. Manderscheid's childhood trilogy Chaco Clack, De Papagayum Kashtabam and Fire Flam, published in 1988, surprisingly sold 3,000 copies. Chaco Clack is in fact a kind of autobiography told by an outsider. The title is a play on words reminding the reader of both a top hat and a military helmet, but it is simply a nickname for the author, alluding to his rounded bald head. Manderscheid's book reveals the author's consciousness of language use in Luxembourg, describing comical incidents with German soldiers in the war as well as the rather artificial use of French based essentially on the language taught in the classroom. His use of Luxembourgish allows him to achieve this most effectively. These initiatives led to a wider interest in writing novels in Luxembourgish. Among those published since 1990 are Frascht by Nika Helming at Angst Virum Grusen Tun by Jean-Michel Trianon, Pearl Ode Pica by Jem Poscheit, Iwa Wasa by George Hausmer, and a number of novels by Josie Brown including Porto Fer Daffa Ortin and Kre Acute I We Acute Enkel.